asked you at the top of the episode to think about one question. And I think this is one question that changes the game. It is the one question I ask myself, and I think you should ask yourself. The question is this: what's one thing I can control in this situation? Hi, I'm Dr. Bree Hearn, and welcome to The Habit Nerd, the podcast where we explore the habits that shape how we live, work, and lead. Most of what we do each day isn't driven by big, conscious decisions. It's driven by habits, quiet, repeated patterns that over time become the silent architects of our lives. In these solo episodes, I'll walk you through the ideas, research, and practical strategies you can actually apply, so you can shift those patterns with intention and create change that sticks. Let's dive in. Hi there, Habit Nerds. Welcome back to another episode, and thanks for joining me. Today, I'm going to talk to you about something that's been coming up a little bit actually in my coaching of individual people and also in some of my speaking rooms. I've been able to work in a couple of smaller scenario type workshops with different leadership teams in the last few weeks. And this idea of the question that we really should be asking ourselves has come up often. I'm going to tell you a story from my own life that has inspired today's episode. And this is a story about feeling a bit stuck in a promotion process at my work. So for those of you who don't know, as much as I'm the habit nerd for a few days a week, and I do speaking and coaching and spend time with you all on this podcast, which I love, the other part of my week, I am employed as an academic, so as a university lecturer at one of Australia's top universities. Now, I am going through, as part of that work, the promotion process at the moment. Now, the academic promotion process, so going from one level to the next, is quite a rigorous process. It's quite competitive. Lots of people go for promotion, not many people are successful, and it is only once a year. So your paperwork is due, I think, in March or April, and then the outcomes don't come out until the end of August or September. So it's only once a year. You need to prepare, in my case, a strict limit to a 20-page document. But on that document, you have to be very judicious about defending and justifying your performance up against some fairly stringent indicators. So you have to be able to justify the impact and the influence that you've had. You have to be able to produce a list and the story around the output. So things like book chapters and journal articles that you've written, and just other ways that you've had impact in the university and in the wider community. I have felt stuck in this process because there are stories of so many of my well-respected colleagues not being promoted. So going through this really time-consuming process, which of course is done in your own time because it's not part of your work. So you're doing it in the evenings, on the weekends, you're putting this together, and the amount of people who I really respect that have been unsuccessful over the years, there are so many. So I've got a bit of a story in my head about the unlikelihood of me being successful in this process because of so much evidence of other people not being successful over the years. Mind you, there are a lot of my colleagues who have been successful too. So why this is relevant is this is about having a locus of control. Now, a locus of control is a psychological concept, and it's basically where people believe control over the events in their life resides. It was developed by psychologist Julian B. Rotter as part of his social learning theory back in 1950s, but it was formally described as the locus of control in 1966. So I'll just very quickly explain the research to you. On one end of the continuum is the external locus of control. Now, people with a strong external locus of control, and you might identify as one of these people, tend to believe that outcomes are determined by luck, by fate, or by other people. These people who operate on the external locus of control think that success and failure are largely outside of their control, and they believe that they have limited influence over what happens. So some examples might be, if you fail a test, you might say, well, the test was unfair. Or if you were successful and you got the job that you went for, you might say, I was lucky. You might, if you've got a strong external locus of control, you might make comments like, well, there's no point trying because the decision has already been made. So if I, in the promotion process and this feeling of stuckness, was choosing to operate from an external locus of control, I could say, well, it's too competitive. It just depends who's on the panel and the decision's already made. So I won't even put too much effort into it. Something else you might hear is somebody says, oh, of course he was picked for that opportunity. His dad pours heaps of money into the corporation. The external locus of control is the belief that success is determined by factors that are outside of your control. So things like having natural good looks, or money, or family connections, or maybe who your boss happens to be at the time. So that's the external locus of control. The internal locus of control, though, is at the other end of that continuum. People who have a strong internal locus of control tend to believe things like this: my actions can influence my outcomes. They believe things like effort does matter, grit matters, being able to dust yourself off after you've had a setback and try again does matter. People with an internal locus of control believe that they can learn, that they can adapt, that they can make tweaks, and that they can improve. People with a strong internal locus of control believe that successes and setbacks are often linked to their own decisions and their own behaviors. So internal locus of control is the belief that success is correlated with our own actions. So with things like hard work, with discipline, with good planning, it's about taking personal accountability. So some examples of something you might say if you have a strong internal locus of control might be, I did well on that test because I prepared thoroughly. Or I didn't get the result I wanted this time, so I'm going to need a different strategy. Now, there is an important nuance here. There's a misconception that internal locus of control means that you control everything. And of course you don't. A healthier interpretation is like, the internal focus of control focuses on what you can influence, while acknowledging that many things remain outside of your control. So, for example, you can't control the economy. You can't control other people's opinions. You can't control what other people think. You can't control funding decisions, for example, at your place of employment. But you can control other important things like your habits. I'm the habit nerd. I'm so interested in the habits that people do put in place to give themselves the best chance of success in their health, in their work, in their relationships. You can control how well you prepare. Whilst you can't control other people's opinions, you can control your responses to things. And you can control how you spend your attention and where you put your energy. The distinction is often what separates a sense of agency from just what's wishful thinking. Now, a couple of practical examples. Last week, my episode, at the time of recording, last week, my Habit Nerd episode featured champion netballer, Commonwealth Games Australian Diamond captain Liz Watson. I'm still buzzing over that. She's my all-time favourite netball player, probably my favourite athlete. I asked her about what goes through her head when she's about to throw the first centre pass in a really big game. It might be a Commonwealth Games game, or it might be a World Cup game, and she's the captain. So I wanted to know what's going through your head. But what she told me was that by the time she gets to that first whistle of the game, she's done everything that she can, and it's just a matter of executing it. So she has done as much preparation as she can with her training throughout the week. She has analyzed her opponent's game. She has worked with her own, sports scientists and nutritionists to come up with a game day plan for her. She has worked hard on her nutrition. So she understands that whilst she might lose, that her team might lose, she knows that within her internal locus of control, she has done everything to set herself up to maximum success. And so it takes the pressure off. I also asked her about how she returns from setbacks, and she talked about when she had a broken foot. One season she had a fractured bone in her foot, and so she had to take the whole year off. But the reason that she was quite confident going back was because she had been doing all of the things that were inside her internal locus of control while she was off the court. So she couldn't do any training that involved her lower body because she couldn't put weight on her feet, but she could do boxing. She could do arm exercises and upper body exercises. She could still be a part of her team, so she could help out with things like mentoring some of the younger and less experienced players. She felt that sense of community. She was able to focus on her nutrition and her hydration and her sleep. So all of the things that she could do within her locus of control, she did. And that way, when she went back, she was quite confident that the data scientists had said, yes, you're ready to go. And she just locked in and had a really successful return to professional netball. Something else recently, my 15-year-old daughter has just done exams, secondary school exams for the first time. I told her, your dad and I don't mind what results you get. You could get a terrible score on one of your exams or a couple of your exams, but what you can do to feel as ready as you possibly can is to give yourself the gift of proper preparation. And I remember my dad saying that to me, proper preparation prevents poor performance. So I just mentored her and supported her to lock in and give it her best shot. And that way, when she turned up to her maths exam or her science exam and the questions were really hard, she's given herself the best possible preparation to do well. And if she doesn't, it's not because of anything else that was in her control. I've also got a master's student at the moment. He failed his first assignment. So there's 2 assignments that make up the grade. They're worth 50% each. He failed the first one dismally. So I went up to him and said, now, let's call him Christopher. I said, Christopher, let's have a meeting. I want you to come to the meeting in 2 weeks' time with a plan for your second assignment. I want you to have all of the references that you're calling on. I want you to have a structure of what you think needs to go into each paragraph of this essay. And I will sit with you and we will step this out. Now, what I wanted to model for Christopher is that proper preparation and meeting me halfway as the person who was going to mark that assignment was going to give him the best possible chance of passing the subject, because he needed quite a high score on the second assignment because his first assignment he had failed. And I've just marked that in this last week, his second assignment, and he's done very well. So it isn't surprising, given all of these examples, that the studies show people with an internal locus of control show increased levels of motivation. They have greater grit and resilience, and they have overall higher satisfaction with their life and their work. So I asked you at the top of the episode to think about one question. And I think this is one question that changes the game. It is the one question I ask myself, and I think you should ask yourself. The question is this: what's one thing I can control in this situation? So, back to my promotion example, if I'm to ask myself, what's one thing I can control in this situation that feels scary and unlikely, I can control leaving myself ample time to write and review and edit and rewrite my application. I can seek feedback from my mentors at work, people who are already further along than me and people who have experienced success in the promotion process before. I can use good, nuanced AI prompts to scan the policies and the frameworks from my university against my application and ask it to give me targeted feedback on where I need to tighten up. I cannot control the outcome. I will get a call to go to the meeting to be given the outcome of whether I am successful in the promotion or not. I can't control what is said to me on that day, but I can do my part. That is my internal locus of control. I can do my part to the best of my ability. Because that way, if I'm not successful, I can try again. I can learn from it. I can ask questions about why I wasn't promoted in this particular round, but I won't walk out thinking I could have done any more. So, habit nerds, let's test and train your internal locus of control. I'm going to give you a challenge. It's got 4 steps, okay? I want you to strengthen your internal locus of control because, as I said, it is not surprising. People with a stronger internal locus of control have more motivation, they are more resilient, and they are overall happier in their life and in their work. And I want that for you. I want you to feel happiness and success and fulfillment at work and in your life. So here's the 4 steps. First of all, I want you to pick one problem that you can actually solve. So maybe a problem is you need to clean out one section of your bookshelf. Step 2 is to set a 10-minute timer and to take just one small step. So maybe you could pull out all of the books on that one shelf. Then anything that you are going to donate, you put in a plastic bag ready to take to Goodwill or to the op shop. Then you put the remaining books back on the shelf neatly. Now, the 3rd step is an important one. You name the cause out loud when you notice the benefit. So an example might be, wow, it's because of less clutter that I feel more focused in here. The reason this is important, habit nerds, is saying it out loud rewires your brain to believe that you do have some control over your life's outcomes. And then the 4th step is you stack the evidence. So you do it again with the next problem. An example might be you want to improve your sleep. So maybe you could avoid blue light from screens for an hour before you go to bed. Then when you wake up refreshed, say out loud to yourself, wow, I had a better sleep because my brain powered down properly last night. Maybe another example is you want to get more work done, so you hide your phone in a drawer in another room, which is a trick I use. After you've had a really focused hour or 2, say out loud to yourself, wow, without the distraction of my phone, I was really productive. If you do this for long enough, motivation becomes a byproduct of the evidence that you have built by yourself. And a last important tip, I said there was 4, but I'm going to give you a bonus one here. And this might feel counterproductive, but just trust me and trust the evidence. Adopt a longer timeline or a time horizon. It's hard to compete with someone who thinks in years rather than in days or weeks. So I hope that idea of focusing on the locus of control and strengthening your internal locus of control by asking yourself this one question: what's one thing I can control in this situation? Is helpful. I would love you to share this episode on your Instagram, make it a story, send it on to somebody who you think could gain something from learning about the internal locus of control. Maybe it's a student in your life, maybe it's a family member. Either way, I'm so happy that you spent the time with me. Get in touch with me, say what you enjoyed about the episode, what you got from it. And of course, I'm always up for feedback and suggestions for future episodes. But until we catch up next time, take care. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love you to share it with someone who might need it too. Because sometimes one conversation, one idea, or one small shift can change everything. Thank you for being with me here on the Habit Nerd podcast. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this episode was recorded, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. Take care, habit nerds, and remember the habits you practice today are quietly shaping your tomorrow.